Hello, everyone. My name's Erica.
My name's Caitlin.
And we want to welcome you all to Let's Go Sew, Sewing for Beginners. Now, we're going to go through the basics of sewing at a beginner level. And we are excited to teach you a new skill that we hope you're going to love. Now, this first episode will be talking about the tools and supplies that are needed. So we're going to go down our list. If you missed our intro video, be sure to go back and check that out. Now, in this series, we'll be using tools listed in the recommended section, plus the ones in the additional tools section. And as you can see, the first thing listed is a sewing machine, but we'll be going through sewing machine basics and tools in episodes to come.
The next three items are the rotary cutter, the quilting ruler,
here we go,
and the rotary cutting mat, which they all work together. I'll briefly go over these today, but we'll go over them in depth in our cutting episode.
Great. All right, so let's talk about the rotary cutter.
Okay. I have two rotary cutters today. They are a tool for cutting fabric, and they revolve instead of stay stationary. So when you cut it, it's kind of like cutting with a pizza cutter, but it's meant for fabric.
And they're sharp, right?
Yes, yes.
They're sharp.
And they have a safety functions and other functions to cut fabric accurately.
Okay, because you want to avoid injury because we've all done it.
Correct. The first one I have here is from AccuQuilt, and this function has a safety function where you slide it down to expose the blade. It is also able to do left-handed and right-handed and left-handed cuts.
Okay.
The second one I have today is the June Taylor one, which you can expose the blade by pressing the trigger, and it will automatically lock. To take it into safety position, you hit the button, and it will go automatically back into position. And this is also a left-handed and right-handed tool.
Okay, that's important. All right, next up, we've got our quilting ruler. I'll hold it up here for you.
So to cut...
It's kind of hard to see. Let's hold it down here.
So to cut straight with a rotary cutter, you use a quilting ruler.
Okay.
And they have lines and grids to help you cut, mark, and measure your fabric to create your project.
Right. There's many different sizes of quilting rulers. We recommend this, right?
This is the 6x24 ruler. And the reason why we recommend that is most fabrics are folded to a 22-inch and wound onto a bolt.
Okay.
And so if you have a 22-inch piece of fabric, you can cut the full width with the 24-inch
Makes sense.
ruler.
Okay, and you're going to show how to use this in the next episode,
yes,
right?
I'm going to work with all three of these rulers, mats,
and the rotary mat. So
Yes.
let's talk about that next.
So this is a rotary mat. This is what you use to cut your fabric on top of so you protect your work surface.
Right.
They come in multiple different sizes like the rulers. Today we have the...
This is a big one. This is a 24 by 36. I love working on a big one. If you're just getting started, we've got an 18 by 24 that you might be more comfortable with. We've also got, here, I'll let you talk about this. This is the June Taylor rotary cutting mat that's on
Yes.
one side.
So this is the cut and press, which is the one surface is the cutting rotary cutting mat.
Right.
And this one's actually a hard surface rotary cutting mat, and this one's a softer surface rotary cutting
Right.
mat. But also on the other side of this one, which is what we're going to talk about next, is a pressing surface. So this is a surface that has a grid on it to press your quilt blocks straight. You can also pin in it, and because it's a cushioned surface, you can iron your appliques without ruining them.
Oh, okay. And it's got a nice little handle on top for carrying along. So, but again, we're going to do an in-depth cutting demonstration coming up in the next episode.
But you don't have to use the June Taylor cut and press as your pressing surface. We also have a wool mat that works very well for this because wool can take heat.
Yes.
So, and it is also a little cushion, so it will also give some give.
Well, and it's got a little bit of grip, so it's going to
Yes.
kind of grab your fabric too. So pressing is important when you're working with fabric, and well-pressed fabric and seams make a cleaner product when it's done, whether it's a quilt, a tote, a garment, whatever you're doing. So for beginners and experts alike, pressing your project throughout will make it easier to construct. So you will need that. And of course you can use an ironing board if you want to. That's the most well-known pressing surface. And that is nice because I like to keep the wool mat next to my sewing machine, so I don't have to get up every time I press.
And the June Taylor cut and press comes in 2 different sizes, so if you do want a smaller size to keep next to your sewing machine, you can get the first cut and press one.
And next up, if you got a pressing surface, we need what?
An iron.
An iron. So most of us, I think, understand the concept of ironing. It uses heat to remove wrinkles and creases in your fabric, right? So what is tricky about ironing and knowing the right settings as well as what can and can't be ironed? Now most irons will have a temperature setting and it'll dial up, or it'll say a fabric type, and you can just dial it up accordingly. However, there are temperature gauge irons as well. And in that case, you want to set a higher heat for natural fibers like what?
Cottons, wools, and linens.
Okay. And then a lower heat setting if you're working with something that has synthetic fibers in it, because those will melt. So you'll learn more about fabric in a later episode, but if you've got any doubts about the fabric you're working with, always use a test piece and test that iron on it before you start pressing your whole project, right?
Of course.
Okay, and there's a few other materials that usually accompany sewing projects that shouldn't be ironed. What can we say about those, Caitlin?
That would be the batting, which is the cotton that you put in between your fabrics.
Okay.
Non-fusible stabilizer, which can melt.
Okay.
And other like polyfills, like the synthetics that will melt.
Okay, and you're going to go over a few of those things throughout the series, right?
Yes, correct.
Okay. And there's a difference between what? Ironing and
pressing.
And you're going to go over that coming up in another
Correct.
episode too. All right, next up is scissors, Caitlin.
Yes, scissors. Most of us learned how to use this as in kindergarten and
Right.
throughout our years. So it's same function, so we won't bore you on how to cut with scissors, but what we will use the scissors for in this series is trimming fabrics, threads, rough cutting, and snipping corners.
Right, right, so it's important. And I always think that pins are important. That's the next tool up, right?
Yes. Pins are used to hold your fabric and your projects together while you're working with it so that they don't go all over the place. Pinning seems simple, but if you haven't pinned before, you shouldn't put it in at a wrong angle to create like creases in your fabric, because then when you're sewing, those creases will stay.
And that's not a good thing. You don't want, the lady who taught me how to sew talked about bungees.
Yes.
You don't want bungees. So you want to make sure that pin's going through both of your layers of fabric, and it goes through kind of at a, I put it in this direction so that it's going under the foot, it would go under the foot, and then I pull it out, right? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yes.
So with thick layers, like pinning fabric and batting together, you want to pin a little bit more shallow, so otherwise the layers are going to pucker as well, and you talked about that. So there's other tools that we can hold things together with as well, right? And I think we've got some of those over there.
We have clips that will clip on. Instead of going through your fabric, it clips and holds all your fabrics together.
Those are fabulous.
There's also magnetics that will hold them together with the same kind of concept as the clips, so they don't go through your fabric.
All right, now we don't like to admit it, but there's one that we are gonna have to have. What's it called?
It's called the seam ripper.
Yep.
That tool is used to rip out your seams as it suggests. So you would want to insert it into your seams without catching your fabric, and you rip it across so that you just cut all the threads in your seams.
Right.
And after that, you just remove the seam or the threads, and you can start again.
We'll probably show that later on, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right, that's it for essential tools that you're going to need to help you create the perfect project. There are many more tools and notions out there to help sewists with different kinds of projects and techniques, but the ones we went through today are the main tools that you're going to use with pretty much every project. Speaking of other tools and notions, I mentioned additional tools section. So here are some of the products that we've got mentioned, right? In that
Yes.
additional tool section. And it's going to start with Starch Savvy.
Starch Savvy is a spray starch that you put on your fabrics so that it becomes stiffer, so it works well and it holds the fibers in place. So when you're sewing, they don't warp or distort.
And how do we use it?
You spray it on your fabric and let it seep in just a bit, and then you iron it until it's dry.
And I like using that, I've discovered, with small pieces too, but
Yes.
we'll get there. Okay, the next one up is quilt basting spray. So what is this all about?
This is a spray adhesive that you put on your batting, so when you're putting your layers together at the end of your projects, that it doesn't shift and it keeps it and holds it in place.
All right, now one of my favorite tools is a fabric glue stick. And you know what? Fabric glue sticks are different than regular paper glue sticks, aren't
Yes,
they?
they
Caitlin?
are. As the name suggests, it holds your fabric in place, but they go on purple and they
Oh, yeah,
dry
I
clear.
should open it up. See, here you can see it's purple. It's going to look purple on it. Dry clear. I love it.
Which are great for holding fabrics in place if you need a smaller section that you don't want to pin or anything like that. We usually use it a lot on our Quilt As You Go products.
Yes. Speaking of, we've got another great notion that I love, partially because I love the name of it.
Yes.
But this is our magic seam wand. So talk about this.
Yes, like we suggested that you cannot iron on batting. So when you're working with our Quilt As You Go projects that have exposed batting with
Right.
seams, you want to press it with the wooden magic seam wand, which is an alternative to finger pressing, and it creates crisp seams while you're working, so you have a better finished product.
And you can also actually heat up the tip if you want to, and that amount of heat is not going to hurt your batting. So that's important to remember. All right, now we're getting into another aid, and it's called a shape cut ruler. And this is a ruler, Caitlin, to help you cut almost any shape. And if you want to see a full demonstration of this ruler, you can find it where?
On our AccuQuilt website under the Shape Cut product page.
Okay. All right. Then, of course, there's always AccuQuilt cutters and dies. Now, we mentioned earlier that rotary cutting is a traditional way of cutting fabrics. And although rotary cutting is a skill that should be learned, AccuQuilt has developed an easier and 100% more accurate solution for cutting fabric with Go fabric dies. All right, Caitlin. That's it for our tools and supplies portion. In the next episode, we'll be going over types of fabric and how to use them.
Happy sewing!